This episode of The Ride is brought to you by Troxel Helmets. Troxel would like to introduce the new terrain helmet. This new next-level low-profile helmet features 12 extra-large vents and a frontal reinforcement cage for maximum airflow and an added impact resistance. With a patented moisture-wicking cool core headliner treated with innovative fused technology that fights odor-causing bacteria, this helmet is engineered for cool, comfortable rides.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is Nichole Jericho. I'm here with my co-host, Jillian Sinclair, and today we are talking with Kari Klingenberg, a reining professional based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, who has, been part of the industry for a long time, coaches non-pros to championships, shows in the open division to championships. She's standing stud. She's kind of has her hand in every part of the reining industry. So thank you so much, Kari, for coming on and doing this with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So anyway, I guess we'll get started from the beginning, because for any of our listeners who might not be familiar with who you are or the reining industry in general, just because we have such a broad audience, can you kind of talk a little bit about your horse life and how you even got involved with horses to begin with?
I don't know. I think I was just born a horse crazy little girl. My parents weren't into horses at all. I think I passed one driving with them one day, and I had a babysitter that had horses, and I just fell in love with it. And she actually got me my first lesson. I was 4 years old and kind of just never got out of that mode in life, just always stayed in it. I rode with one gal from when I was 4 years old until I think I was 10, and she showed Morgan. So I showed some Morgan horses with her, did all the hunt seat equitation, stock seat equitation, all that. And then I had a little half Arabian that I showed, and I rode with Jeff and Mel Lee from when I was, 10 till 18 as a youth rider, and then went to college for a short amount of time, and then came back and was their assistant trainer until 2006. So I was 23 years old. Then went off to do the cow horse stuff and, reining more than anything. But the lady I worked for was cow horse, and that's just kind of how there was a lot of stuff in between, but that's kind of how I got into the reining to begin with.
How did you were taking lessons? Was the barn, did they just happen to have Morgans? Is that kind of how you ended up riding those horses?
Yeah, the lady her name was Captain Cloud, and she's a great lady. I know her, and she just had a really good youth program. It was a really great way to grow up. I think there was 10 of us, and you take those horses in every single class possible, and she was really good at teaching fundamentals of riding, and she was really good. And then another lady that did Morgan horses that I kind of would take lessons for, her daughters she wasn't really, she wasn't a trainer, but she coached her daughters to many national championships, and she was really big on equitation. And so she'd help me, and we leased a horse from her. She was great. And then Jeff and Melody Lee, who I was a youth with and did the Arab stuff, they were very pivotal in my life, just great people. I learned so much about horsemanship and running a business, and they're just good humans. So, I feel really lucky that I was with them for so much of my youth, learning about just, life in general, but just really good horsemen. So.
What was the transition like going from Morgans and Arabians to the stock horse and quarter horses? Was that, what was that like, just because they are such different animals?
Yeah, it's very different. So after I went to college and I was the assistant for Jeff and Mel, we had a customer that her daughter had ridden with Jeff and Mel as a youth, and then Jenny Johnson was her name. She wanted to get into horses and just have some fun. She didn't want an Arabian show horse at the time, but she bought this little cute quarter horse. And since I was kind of the worst assistant, last string assistant, because I was younger and, I didn't know as much as some of the other people that worked there, I would take Jenny and her little mare Rose to, the open all around show. I don't even know if they have them anymore. They're little play day, Saturday, Sunday shows. I would take her there, and one day at this little show, they had a reining class, and so we took her in. It was horrible. She couldn't change leads. She couldn't do anything. And then I just got really determined to like teach this little mare these things. And she ended up being like really cool. And she could stop and Jeff helped me. Jeff did like with the Arabians, we did also everything, you know, they do everything. And so he would help me. We taught her how to change leads and turn and stop. And so I took this little mare, I think it was like a year or two later after trying to figure all this stuff out. And they pretty much gave me free rein to just do whatever, because, you know, they have a huge business and just completely Arabian. So I took this little quarter horse and just was pretty much enamored with it. You know, I'd seen some of the stuff like at the higher level for the Arabian shows. I'd seen the reining and it was good. But then going to one of these big quarter horse shows, I mean, it was amazing. The horses they were amazing. So that was kind of like my first big interest into it. And that's when I met Sue Soltze that I worked for in the cow horse. And I just really, I don't know, they're just such a different animal. I'm so grateful though that I started with Morgans and Arabs, because I think that teaches you a lot of patience and, you know, just putting a different value on things. You know, like I think a lot of times it's easy to think a horse is difficult or hot. You know, when I mean, these quarter horses, we're spoiled. Like there's so many horses, so many great horses. Like we've just bred incredible minded animals. And I like the ones that, if, you know, they might be a little bit different. And I know that like my upbringing helped me with that, you know, definitely just seeing a different way, you know, it's helped me.
I totally get where you're coming from, especially with like the breeding. You know, we've bred these to be such great-minded animals. And I'm sure this is across the board, regardless of discipline or breed. You know, we've been breeding these horses to be more, you know, even specialized in what they're doing and their abilities. And it's so funny because I'm at like a boarding barn and there's lots of rescue horses there because they also kind of do a rescue on the side. And I had a 2-year-old that I was breaking out or starting, and everybody was just infatuated with what I was doing, and I'm like, this is easy. She was bred to do this. Like I threw a saddle on her after 4 days of working with her. Like that's easy. Like being able to handle these untouched horses that, you know, may have been thrown away or whatever, have different breeding that hasn't been bred into them. I'm like, that's the hard stuff. Like if you can do that, you can break out the easy ones.
Oh, for sure. I know. It's like some of these horses too. I mean, it's like the talent, everything, the want to do it just oozes out of them. I mean, we're very lucky, like with the animals that we have, you know, years and years of people really studying what they are, what's going to cross well. I mean, it's pretty great. I don't think people 30 years ago would have imagined the horses would be doing what they're doing and the minds that these horses have. I think that is something to be very proud of in our industry.
I totally agree to that. You mentioned that you did everything when you were showing the Arabians and the half Arabians. And did you find that having that kind of classical background helped you transition into events like the cow horse and the reining, where, I mean, you know, you're not so worried about how you sit, but I would imagine it makes that transition just a little bit easier when you have a good seat and good balance and your hands are quiet and your legs are still. And
no, it for sure did. And I really loved in the youth, I loved equitation and horsemanship. I loved all of that stuff and just having that structure and just the classic. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's a beautiful thing, like a really good equitation rider. And I've definitely tried to carry that on into the reining for myself when I show. I mean, I try to, you know, it's a lot different, and it was hard to break some of the stuff, how, you know, stiff you would say. Even like when I showed professionally with the Arabs and I showed the hunter horses, I mean, you know, you feel the horse still, but you're stiff. You keep yourself in more of a box, you know, for sure. And so like letting go of that was a little bit difficult for me at first, but I've definitely tried to keep some of that, like just try to keep myself. I don't want to get like super sloppy. And that is something with my youth kids and my non-pros, I am pretty fanatical about, like learning how to ride. I mean, something I appreciated from people that I started with, just having, you know, I mean, some people, when you say heels down and they've been riding reiners or whatever for so long, they're like, what? You know, it's not something that they have had preach to them. And I mean, for me, it's very important. And I mean, because there is a reason for it, like all those classic styles. I mean, there's a reason why that's been such a big thing fundamentally for riders. And, you know, where you sit, where your horse balances, where you feel, you know, there's a lot to it. So, I mean, I definitely try to teach that. And I mean, I still make my kids no stirrups, no hands, close their eyes. I mean, I torture them a bit, and I mean, but it's good. I mean, that's going to make them good riders down the road.
Well, and I know, like, just from watching, you know, sitting in the arena and watching people show, the ones that are really soft and pretty and quiet, and their hands aren't moving around, their legs aren't flailing around, like, it's so much easier to watch that horse perform at its best. And, you know, I come from the all around originally as well. So, like, I also have that appreciation for just, like, put togetherness, you know, everything looks nice. Your horse looks good when you go in the show pen. You look good when you go in the show pen. And then just, yeah, like you said, building up your muscles and doing all these things, because you're absolutely right. You know, you come from a sport where it did matter how you sit and how you present yourself. Whereas, you know, some of the other sports, it's all about the horse essentially, but having that, like, you know, pretty rider on top is just kind of the icing on the cake. And with it being so competitive these days, you almost need that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody has a different style. Like I do. In my fast circles, like I like to stand up and like almost on like a really good circle horse. I like to have my hand like between their ears, or like, I mean, and it's kind of dramatic, but I like it. And I mean, I think for me, it shows how willing they are to stay there between and like, you know, circle like they're on rails. Some people don't like it, and that's okay. But like that's probably, I can't sit back on very many horses. I just feel like I'm all over the place. And that comes from riding a lot of hunters. You know, like I want to be, that's just where I feel comfortable going fast, you know? So yeah, but I mean, that's just, you know, that's another style thing. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily like a classic thing, but you know, when I'm running down to a stop, I'm definitely not sitting forward like that, but I don't know. I like everything to look just smooth and cool, and your horse is doing big stuff, you know, under you. I think that's what I go for.
I like it. You mentioned a couple times that you went and transitioned over to the cow horse after kind of doing some of the Arabian stuff professionally. What was that transition like? Had you ever had any experience working the cows or doing any kind of cow horse events, or no? Yeah.
No, like it was so embarrassing. I remember I went there and I met them. They were great people, Sue Solsey, Tom Pasma, and I went to their place, got the job and everything, and because they had seen me show. And, you know, I rode the reiners, and it was like that part, you know, like you show up and my horses did everything, or my horse did everything. And then so I worked there a few days, and then it was probably the third day I was there. They were like, okay, now just bring out whatever horse and you're going to box. And I was like, I'm going to, what? Like, I had no idea. Like, and I had, honest to God, I'd watched cutting before, but I'd never watched any type of cow horse, nothing. Like, it was like an embarrassing, foolish, like, it was not good. But I mean, I really loved it. Like, and I was raised on a farm. And so, I mean, we had sheep and cattle. So, I mean, I knew about how to move an animal's body and where you need to be. So, I mean, that part came naturally to me, but I had really never paid any attention to it. All I really wanted to do was the reining. And you know, she did reining, but her biggest thing was cow horse. So I definitely, I remember we worked cattle on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and sometimes whatever day, I don't know, I mean, it changed, but I remember I'd wake up sometimes like, oh my God, another day like this, like this is going to be bad. You know, cause it's hard to put yourself out there and you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, the transition, I will say, working for Jeff Lee, like he was very good at training his horses and teaching me just body control and how to have a horse collected. So really going into everything I've tried since then, I've been able to find my way pretty easily for that, you know, like for the training, like the reining maneuvers. So like the dry work for the cow stuff was easy. I didn't necessarily know how to train one to really turn or or stop. I didn't understand that stuff completely, but all the other stuff was easy for me to do. And then I kind of just always faked it till I made it. I just kind of threw myself out there, got pretty uncomfortable, and you figure it out.
I think those are the uncomfortable spots are where you really become a better rider. Because you're right. If you just stay in your happy place in your comfort zone forever, you're never going to get out of the box. And I get it. I was riding cow horses a couple of years ago before I got my reiner, and those cows are very humbling. It's a very humbling experience. You think you know what you're doing, and then you put a cow out there and they'll let you do not know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so much fun when it's right, and it's fun when it's not, but it's a lot. And it's it's intense too, because you can get hurt, you can put yourself in a bad position. There's a lot to it, but yeah, I was definitely not prepared for that job, and not prepared there, but it was good. It was a good learning experience.
I can't imagine, I come from the all around, and that's really all I've ever done, but bringing in another animal into your, into the ride and into your class and everything, to me, that's kind of crazy, having to predict what the other animal's going to do, because you're already worrying about what your horse is going to do and what you're doing. But so was that part of the reason that you moved your business down to Arizona, or, what was it, the reining that brought you there, or how did you kind of end up making that move? Because that's a big transition from the, Pacific Northwest to Arizona.
Yeah, I think it is another thing that kind of just falls into feeling uncomfortable. I don't know, I've kind of, as weird as it might sound, I've kind of gotten I like the feeling of being uncomfortable, just because pushing yourself outside of what you think is possible. And it's so easy to think that things are not possible. And so the minute I ever feel that, I always try to push myself into that position, where you're going to feel outside the line of what you think you're capable of doing, and just try a little bit harder to get there. So after I did the cow horse, I started my own business. And so that was 2008. It was June 2008. And I was so, I didn't know a lot. I was 24, and that was right when the recession hit. And I just thought, I'll start a business, it's like a hobby, people having horses. And, honestly, I never had, there was hard times, and really bad horses that I trained, but it was great. I wouldn't change it if there was a way to change my path to go back to make things easier or better at some point. I'm grateful for the way I did it. I literally did not know what I was doing. And I'd worked for Sue for a year and a half or 2 years, and then just went out and I was a reining trainer. Well, not really, but that's what I wanted to be. And I took a bunch of horses. I was taking kids to the fairs, these little arenas that have a dirt rim around, with a ring, and then it's grass on the inside, because just really country stuff. And I just kept on pushing and trying. And then Pam Nelson in Foothills Farms, who also owns Mr. Electric Spark, I met her in 2010, and we just we hit it off and started buying horses, and she bought me some nice horses, took me back to Oklahoma, and for the futurity, I showed in the affiliate finals. And so I showed in Washington a while. I remember as horrible as it sounds, I'd pray that their horse would kick out or they'd go off pattern, so I'd have a chance to be up there. Because it was pretty bad. I was pretty bad. When you start out at stuff, it was a struggle, and I didn't have, the best horses, but I just kept on trying, kept on showing up. I had some really great customers back in Washington, and I don't know, I started going back to the Derby and the futurity, and I was always making, always in the level 1 finals, but then would just get, my hat handed to me in the finals, or I'd never, I might make it in the level 2, and, really I was self-taught. I learned stuff from the cow horse. Basically I gave a lot of non-pro lessons, and I gave, I didn't go work for somebody, and I probably should have, but so I didn't understand everything about it. I just kind of watched and learned. And so I knew when I was in Washington, I was making the level 1, sometimes I would sneak in the level 2. I just knew that I wasn't gonna make it where I wanted to be if I stayed there. And it was great. Like I said, I wouldn't change the way I did it, but I don't know. I had a lot of success. I was winning a lot in Washington and I had a great business and great customers towards the, end of my stay there. And I just decided I was going to move to Scottsdale, and it was between Scottsdale or Texas. And I love Scottsdale. Every time we'd come here, Pam has a house here, and I came and visited, and I just loved it here. So I moved here, and it's been really great, and it's been really hard at the same time. And I always kind of put myself into doing too much stuff. Like, I never knew anything about standing a stallion. It's just this horse came into our life, and like, we loved him, and we're like, why not? But I had no idea what it would take and what it still takes. And it's tough, but we've had him now 6 or 7 years, and it's been good, but I've definitely have a lot going on here.
So I could imagine that training in the Pacific Northwest versus Scottsdale, which, by the way, I'm with you. Like, I would live in Scottsdale. If I did not live in Colorado, I would be in Scottsdale in a heartbeat. And I love being able to go out and like film with everybody out there, because I love Scottsdale. So yeah, good choice. But, I could imagine that being in the Pacific Northwest compared to Scottsdale, where in Scottsdale, for the people that, might be listening who are not really familiar with it, all these trainers have these big, beautiful outdoor arenas, lots of space to work. The weather is fairly cooperative. It gets pretty hot in the summer, but outside of that, the Pacific Northwest, you're probably stuck in indoor arenas a little bit more, kind of like I am out here in Colorado. And most of the time, indoor arenas are smaller, you're stuck in more confined spaces. How did you kind of go around that as a horse trainer, kind of working with the elements that you had? I
didn't really know it any other way. Like, I was born in the Northwest, and I didn't know it any other way. Like, I'd always been in a small arena, and until I started going into other shows, like bigger shows, I didn't realize just how small the arena was I was training in. I don't know, you just make the best of it. I remember one time Todd Bergen came up and helped some of myself and the other trainers up there, and he gave us some like tips for how to, run stop one in a short arena that helped, which helped a lot. But it's just kind of like one of those things, if you don't know it any different, it's just, you just don't know. And now it's like, we have our arena here is a big outdoor. It's the size of the NRBC's arena. Like, so it's huge, and which is awesome. But then what happens is their arena is so big. So like, for our 3-year-old, our Derby horses, we usually try to go somewhere the week before to a smaller arena so we can like steer our horses more. Because the first 2 years we were here, we went, and my horses were like, it took a couple of days to get everybody adjusted, because you are steering so much in a smaller arena. And so there's things about riding a smaller arena that I think help, like just how much you have to steer and like maneuver their bodies. We're in a bigger arena, and you can put your hand forward a lot more, and just, you've got a lot more area to cruise, So yeah.
I guess I never really thought about it like that, but it gives me a little hope that me and this tiny little indoor will do okay. Yeah, no, I just think that's so interesting, because I'm from the Chicagoland area, so another cold area with lots of indoors. And the first time I really got out to like, Texas, you see some big arenas, but you go to Arizona, and the facilities are just beautiful. There's like open air everywhere, spacey. Like, it's just, it's a mind of its own out there, and I love it. But we've kind of talked a little bit about your show career and you moving to Scottsdale so that you can kind of continue your journey as a professional. What's that been like? Scottsdale, that is not for the weak of heart by any means. You have the top reiners in the world, like literally next door. Literally like just down the street. And yeah. I would imagine that that's really, like you have the best of the best in your backyard.
Yeah. I think it's all in the way you look at it, and you have to be realistic, like where you are, not lose sight of like the accomplishments you've made, because it'd be easy to be like hard on yourself that way or compare yourself. But I also really believe that you rise and fall to the level of your competition, So, being here, there's like some of the best riders, and they're there. But like, when you're around them at horse shows, when you're around all of that and the energy, or you can just watch, or I've went and gone help, it just changes a lot. And I mean, if you aspire to be one of those top people, you kind of, you have to understand how that whole show goes, like how they roll and how they work their business and just all of it, So I mean, that's the best way to try to be that and, imitate it, I guess, is to be around it,
Well, you're for sure used to the environment and you see these people every day, not every day, but quite often, and you get familiar with them. And yeah, I just think it's great though that there's so much education and learning just in such a tiny little hub. I mean, there's like you said, you've gotten help from other people. And I know a lot of horse trainers that will literally just like ride across the street to somebody else's house and ride with them for the day. And, it's really cool to have that kind of community. I've never had that kind of community. And I think it's just amazing to see when I get to go there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I definitely, when I lived in Washington, I had some good friends I'd go and ride with, and definitely like I think you can create that culture, wherever you are. And when I was in Washington, everybody I would get help with, I mean, it helped me so much just because it was all super new to me also, and yeah, I mean, there's something to learn everywhere, but so I hate being cold too. Like the rain. And so, I mean, for me, I was like, okay, Scottsdale is like so cool. And like there's so many good riders here and so many good horses, and I'm not going to freeze. So, I mean, it all works.
A very good reason to move. So we've talked a little bit about some of your events that you've won here in the States, but you've actually had the chance to compete overseas in Switzerland during the SVAG World Reining Championships. What was it, 2016? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Can you kind of talk about your experience there? Because it's not very often, you see it a little more in the reining where we have overseas riders coming over here, but it's not very often that people in the Western industry are flying their horses overseas to international competitions. What was that experience?
It was amazing. Like it was super special. It was super special too, because that lady I was talking about that bought horses with me early on. I mean, she's been with me since 2009. Yeah, I think she's had it since 2009. But I mean, so it was with her stud. And it was kind of all a really fast-paced thing. We got this horse, and I think I rode him 6 or 7 times before we went off to NRBC, where I qualified him to go there for Switzerland. And so I didn't really know him that well when I qualified, and he's a lot of horse. Like he's so cool. Like he's like the most amazing, good-minded, like he's just cool. But so I mean, it was definitely like going from driving, I don't even know what kind of car I drove before, and then like a Ferrari. He's a Ferrari, like something like I didn't know how to really do everything on him, because he's just so cool and like he's just so powerful. But so I had 3 months in between when I qualified him, then when we sent him to Switzerland. I mean, there's we sign paperwork that like he was basically leased by the Olympic, the FEI. It's the same paperwork for all what they do with the jumping horses. I mean, they was so strict on what we had to do with him, what he could eat, everything. And then the same for myself. But so, I mean, it was surreal. We hauled him from Scottsdale to LA, and we watched him get in, he got on these little, looks like basically like a straight load trailer that they get them in. The 2 horses go next to each other, and they walk them in, and then they kind of shut it up, and they take a crane and they put him in the plane. I mean, it was crazy. And then Blake Westhoff is a good friend, and he worked for me, and he actually flew over with Mr. Letter Spark. And so he was there the whole time with him, which was cool. And then when we got there, this was summer. So I mean, it was August, so it was like 110 here, and we go there, and it's like the equivalent of like 60, 50, it was like 50 degrees at night. It was cold. So I mean, he was fresh, and I mean, he was fresh, but he was great there. But I mean, it was a big shock to everybody's system. I mean, but it was awesome. I mean, they treat you like, maybe not rock stars, but I mean, they treat you, everything is just so cool. Like, I mean, it was one of the best experiences of my life so far. And the crowd, like the audience was amazing. Like, I mean, just so loud and so excited for, like, especially the night of the finals. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, I had such a great time, and Jeff Peska, he was there, like, he's the coordinator of the team, and he was great, and we're still super close. And, you know, the other guys I was on the team with, I mean, I'm still close with them, and it was awesome. I loved it.
What was that like, you know, bringing a horse? I can't even imagine bringing a horse all the way to Switzerland. That's crazy. And that has to be so much on their bodies. But like you said, with the shock of everything and the temperature, he was fresh, but I imagine you can't work them that much because they're still recovering from the trip. So what was that like, kind of adjusting for him and you, of your work, and how long before you showed were you there for to kind of get him adjusted and back to normal?
They had it planned really well. I mean, I think we were there 8 days before we competed. The horses were there 8 days. I think I was there 6 days before I competed. And I mean, they are very strict about ride times. I mean, everything's a scheduled ride time, and they have people watching, making sure you're not turning too many times, or, you know, you let your horse have air. I mean, it's very regulated.
I didn't get to go to this particular event, but I was at the World Equestrian Games when they were in Tryon for the magazine. And yeah, like you said, it was also an FEI event, so I would imagine that the rules were kind of similar to what you experienced.
Yeah, it's exactly this. Yeah, same.
Yeah, and it was just really interesting to see, because like the horses, the stalls were blocked off. I couldn't even go over there to talk to the horse trainers, and like some of these are horse trainers that I've been working with for years, so I'm on like a fairly good, you know, basis with them, where normally they'd just be like, come to the stalls and we'll do a quick interview. And it's like, no, yeah. I can't even go over there. Like, they won't even let me over here. And
it's crazy. It's so strict.
Yeah. And then they have like you have to do your trot, you know, the jog. And, you know, that's a really big deal in the FEI. So it was really interesting to see the Western industry kind of like, you know, having to do that. And all these guys were like, wait, why am I doing this?
I know, it's so strict, and it's cool though. I mean, it's definitely a deal. It's a big deal, but it's a lot.
It is. Well, it is so cool. And to be represented in the United States, and not even just like in the United States, like you're in Switzerland, you know, representing, and yeah, that's huge.
It was awesome. It was very cool.
So you've talked about Mr. Electric Spark a couple of times, who's obviously a very, very special horse to you. Can you talk a little bit more about him and his personality and just what makes him so special? Because I know he is such a special horse to you and his owners and everybody that's involved with him.
Yeah, he's just, I don't know, you know, I had followed his career, and, you know, he's like a strikingly beautiful horse. I mean, I followed his career just basically because I thought he was so beautiful. And I mean, he did really well showing, and Tyson showed him, Andrea showed him, and we were kind of just in the right place, the right time to buy him. I mean, it was after his Derby years. So, I mean, it was more Pam just, you know, she used to do some breeding stuff with thoroughbreds, and so she wanted to kind of get into more of it here. And I mean, for going into it as blind as we did, I mean, it was definitely something that was meant to happen, just because he is so special. And I mean, it all worked out, and the babies he has now, I mean, are such good representation of him. And I mean, it's just starting. I mean, it's the slowest process you can ever imagine, but it's really cool with his offspring to see so much of him in them and all the parts, you know, like I wish I had him when he was younger, but it wasn't meant to happen that way. And he's great. I mean, he's all business all the time. I mean, we still keep him like he's a show horse just to keep him fit, and he's 13 now, but I mean, he looks amazing. You can hardly tell he's 13 years old, but he doesn't act like, he's very well mannered for being, you know, collected a couple times a week, and he's an awesome horse. And I mean, I love him because it doesn't really love everybody, you know, he really picks his people. So, you know, when he picks you, you feel pretty special, you know. he loves me and he loves Gustavo that works for us. And he tolerates a lot of other people, but like he loves us. I mean, he sees us and talks to us. I mean, he's just, I don't know. He always makes my day better when I get to be around him. He's a good one.
I love that. Well, and it kind of goes back to like the reason that we all do this crazy thing, showing horses all over the country and putting as much money as we do into the horses is that moment right there, them nickering at you when you walk into the barn and having that connection. It's hard to beat. You know, maybe it was this horse in particular, but have you ever had a horse that kind of changed the way that you train or the way that you think about riding or has challenged you to become a better rider?
Yeah, probably every one of them has definitely challenged me. And, you know, like I think we all go through points in our career where we are dead set that it has to be a certain way. They have to feel a certain way. And they're just not all made to be that way, you know? You know, like one thing, like Mr. Dr. Spark, he's super soft in the face and he's like, his belly is like, you know, like you can contort him into any position. And he's like, for as big as he is, he's just pliable everywhere. He can do crazy maneuvers, but they're not all going to feel like that. And, you know, and his babies aren't going to feel like that. There's, you know, some of them do, but not, you know, it's just not the same. And I think everybody in their career, whether professional or non-professional, we give ourselves more frustration than not trying to create something we think is what it's supposed to always be like. And it's not. They're not meant to be that way. And yeah, I mean, I think every one of them has taught me something. And if you keep having the same problem, you definitely have to just kind of be like, okay, either this horse doesn't fit me at all, or I need to not be ignorant. And how can I figure this one out that we can work together, you know? And like Spookwiz Jules has probably been she's been pivotal for me. Like I begged Luke Gagnon to sell her to me for a year and a half. And then he finally let me buy her, or let him buy her. And she, you know, she is not a horse that she's not soft in the face, but she hangs her neck. And so you can run her with a huge drape rein, but if you go to take a hold, it's like nothing there, you know, and I just learned to be okay with that. Cause, you know, coming from the Arabs, I wanted to like feel their face and like push everything around and all of that. And she was never going to do that. But I mean, that mare gave me every ounce of everything she was all the time. And she, you know, let me learn how to show in level 4 finals multiple times. And, you know, I know that if I wouldn't have accepted her and, you know, like championed her for what she was, we wouldn't have been there. You know, if I would have tried to make her something she wasn't, it wouldn't have worked the way it did. And I mean, I'm glad I knew what I had known and probably failed on what I had failed on before I got to her, you know, because it would have been a shame. And, you know, I think there's a lot of horses that can fall through the cracks that way, or they're misunderstood. And I mean, I've misunderstood so many horses, and I just really try to be very aware of that now. Because like you said before, there is a lot of money into this. And one thing with reining is there's so much added money in everything. And for me, of course, I want to win and I'm competitive and I want to do well. I want to do well for my horses, for my owners, for myself. But like, I truly do this because I love them. You know, I can't imagine a day without a horse, or, you know, we forget how lucky we are when we just get to swing a leg over one, and what they give to us, we can take for granted so easily. And it's really amazing what they do over and over again.
Love it. Yeah, it's really interesting as you grow as a rider and a person, you look back and you're like, I wish I would have done that differently. But if you hadn't done that way the first time, you probably wouldn't have learned what you needed to fix the next time. But I so agree with you where it's just, we need, you know, the reason that we do this is because we love it. And yeah, winning is awesome. And don't get me wrong, I'm very competitive, but I'm always going to make sure that my horse is happy and healthy and willing and wanting to do it. And I never want to force it to happen. And I love hearing other trainers kind of say that, because it's, while we all like to think it, hear it out loud, it's really nice to hear and, remind people why we do what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
You work with a lot of non-pros and youth riders too. So on top of your very busy open riding, schedule with horses, like we've talked about in a couple of other questions, you're also training and coaching people while trying to get these open horses ready, which I'd imagine is kind of a tough thing, because, a lot, it seems like sometimes these days you have like open horse trainers and then you have like non-pro coach, you know what I mean? Like it's getting kind of specialized, and to be able to do both, I feel like is such a great skill to have. But I would imagine that it gets kind of chaotic at the horse shows, because, the open classes are going while the non-pro classes are going, and you're in every which direction.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, that's definitely like at the Scottsdale shows, it's really hard to like actually show one in an aged event. And I haven't shown a lot in Scottsdale here the last 2 years, just because we've had so many non-pros but then we go off to NRBC or to Denver for the futurity and, the big futurity itself, or wherever. We don't take as many non-pros, so you can really focus. And the one thing that's nice, like for Daniel and I and my fiance, like if, like last year at the futurity, he had 2 and I didn't have any. I sold my good one, and then I didn't have one to show. So like I took over the non-pro so he could really focus on his horses, and vice versa. So we're really lucky that way to be able to like bounce that off of each other. But yeah, it's hard, and I am very intense. Kind of everybody that rides with us stays away from me before I show, just and not like in a bad way, but I mean, I've sacrificed and dedicated and done everything I can to get to this point. And I mean, I don't want to, not give myself the proper, time to be prepared and get my thoughts together. And, I definitely like to get my horse ready. I like to do certain things. I have my little routine, but I don't enjoy showing when I can't have that, that time, just because the thing for me too is like this, it really means a lot to me to be able to show at this level. Like I came from, we all come from somewhere, and where I came from, this is probably the farthest thing that seemed possible, and so for me, it just like, it means everything. And so I want to be able to nurture that the way I can. And I know that if I'm rushed and if I'm giving 14 lessons or whatever, not that I ever have 14 lessons at the show, but I'm not going to be able to give it what I want to be able to. So, I've learned to, when I need to not show, I don't, and I can focus on other people. And a lot of our customers, we've had them for quite a long time, like Maria Daniele, Pam Nelson. They moved, like they have all their horses here with me, and Maria's had horses with me since I think 2011, Pam 2009. But we also have an understanding of everybody that has a horse, a non-pro horse with us, and there's a few people maybe that are grandfathered in that don't. But I mean, if they want our dream, or if they want their dream to come true, we're going to work hard for them. I mean, it has to go both ways. And so, everybody has a young horse in the pipeline or an open horse for Daniel or to show. And that sounds so crazy, but at the same time, that's really the only way it works, because we can't, I only have so many years that I can like show at this level the way I want to, while my body still works like this. And the thing is I love helping people, and I know not everybody can do that, but at the same time, the only thing I really own is my time, so, you just kind of have to learn how to put boundaries up, and it is really important to me to show, and it's got to be a two-way street, no matter what, it doesn't matter. It just, everybody has to be on the same page and support with your non-pro, and, that's how we do things, and it works really well.
I think people forget that you're also an athlete. The horse is an athlete, but you as well. And and having that ritual before you show. I do something similar where I like to, clean my horse and take care of it and saddle it and everything. I want to touch every part of it and make sure that everything's where I want it. But I think it's really important that we remember that, like, you're just as much as an athlete having to get in the right mindset. You want your horse in that mindset when you go into the show pen, but you also need to be there, and you can't be running around making sure that, this person has this, done and this horse is ready to go here and so forth. And so I think that's huge that you're able to recognize that, and your clients are also able to recognize that and respect it, because I think, you're not going to see, at the Olympics, somebody is coaching somebody right before they go and do a gold medal run. Their only thing is they're focusing on what they have to do. They're coming up with a plan. And like, not to mention, most of these people that at the Olympics are just worrying about themselves. You're worrying about a horse too. And so, I think it's huge. And I love that you have a barn and that's so respectful of that and respectful of each other's time too, because I think that's huge. And it makes for a really happy environment.
It is. And I mean, we definitely try to keep that. And, it's hard. There's a lot of emotions involved in this because, really, like, this job for me, it is my career, but it's my passion, and like that can be really hard. And, you can't help but not, like, kind of identify yourself in that. And, there's a lot of bad horse shows, and you can't, think that's who you are, or like the same thing with your customers. I mean, trying to keep like the dynamic of everything together and just trying to manage it. Like, we have a rule. If someone has a really bad run, they are having a little bit of a meltdown, which, I'm not going to lie, has been me quite a few times. It's like, you go take a 10-minute, 15-minute walk, and then you got to shake it off, because in the scheme of it, there's always another show, and you get to try again. And, it sucks, but the greatest lessons I've ever learned have been from failures, not success. The success is the sweet stuff when you can look back and know how much you struggled and sacrificed and tried and you showed up, and that is the thing I think we forget about, and it's important to know it.
I always joke that, life would be so boring and if everything was perfect, but I truly do believe that it would be, like you said, the failures are what make you a better rider. And winning is awesome. And I love, the feeling of like getting that, you've put so much work and effort into it, and, to see it all come together and have this amazing run and win. It's awesome. But there's so much to take away from the days where things actually don't go according to plan. And I think that's a really great philosophy and mentality.
I mean, it's taken a while to get to that mentality, but here I am.
So we've kind of touched base about your showing career and all that, but you kind of also mentioned that you're breeding Mr. Electric Spark, and that was something that you accidentally fell into. What's been that journey like?
Hard. I mean, it's been hard because, the thing is that not everyone's going to believe in your stallion and the way you do. And I mean, I had to learn to not be defensive, like if somebody didn't like him or if a friend didn't want to breed to him, because I mean, I see so much in him and I love him. And, I've absolutely loved riding the babies, but you just kind of have to, everything's going to work out how it's going to. And he's, people will believe in it when there's a big win or there's whatever. But it has probably the greatest joy, of everything in my career right now is definitely riding. Like right now, I've got 2 3-year-old mares they're by Mr. Electric Spark. We call him Matt, and out of Jules, Spook Wiz Jules. And I mean, just being able to ride those fillies and, get to show them. I mean, I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Cause I mean, it's 2 horses that are so special to me. And then, it's just, I feel so much of both of their parents in them, and both fillies are so different, but I mean, it's amazing. It's the best part of this. I mean, good, bad, or indifferent, and win or lose, it's really cool to be there and to, experience what I've experienced on both of these fillies' parents. I mean, it's great. That's been really great.
That's really cool. What a great combo too. They're both, I bet they're really pretty.
Oh my gosh. There's one, it's a black filly that's crazy pretty. And then the sorrel filly is gorgeous too, but it's just so funny. They're so different. Like the black filly looks more like Matt, and then the sorrel filly, I mean, she looks more like her mom, but and it's the same thing riding her like point and shoot. And I mean, obviously Spook with Jules is absolutely gorgeous, but they're just different, and they're funny, and they're both arrogant like their mother is, and it's pretty fun. So
now, is this is the 3-year-old gear the oldest crop of his, or are some showing already?
No, there's some showing. So there's 2 5-year-olds out there, and I showed both of them and just had kind of funky stuff happen in their 3-year-old year. I won some money on them, and then last year Daniel showed one. But I mean, we really just didn't, it was the very beginning of everything. And I mean, this year, Daniel and I we each have 4 3-year-olds that right now they're like in the line they're all 8 of them are doing really good. They're all Mr. Electric Sparks. And, you know, there's been some really good ones, and then, you know, something happens. Like, that's the hardest part is like we've sold some of the babies, or people breed, and then some, like, you know, you're hopeful, and then some random tragic accident happens. I mean, it just happens. And, you know, and he's not a horse that ever won a major event and has that huge pull that way. That he was consistent for, you know, a 7-year stint of showing. And so, I mean, for me, like a horse that's that consistent over and over and over again, I mean, that's a big deal. And I feel that in his babies. I mean, they just come out, they want to do their job every day. I mean, which for me is great. Like I look forward to riding them every single day. And I mean, I have never had that feeling before. You know, usually there's some 3-year-olds you're going to ride. You're just like, you know, you got to get mentally prepared or whatever. But it's just, I don't know, it's just great. And it's also a mindset, you know, they want to do the job, but it's also because I see so much in them. I mean, every single one of the eight babies we have this year are all out of mares I showed myself. So, you know, it's cool. Like, it's just, it just means more to me in that way. And I don't know, it's great. I'm excited to show them.
Oh, that's awesome. And I like what you were saying, where they're also consistent and like happy to do their job and stuff. Like that's such an important factor in an industry where most of the people that are paying the bills for these trainers are non-pros that need consistent, happy horses that want to do their job. And I think that's huge, because you know, you'll hear about like, oh, this one's really quirky and this one's really this one's really that. But like, you know, most non-pros want a nice, consistent horse that's not going to be naughty in the show pen. They're happy to do their job, and they're talented, they're pretty, you know. I mean, it sounds like such a great fit.
It is a great thing. Like, and so the sorrel filly, the Spook with Jules filly, my best friend bought her for me to show, and then she'll show her as a 4 or 5-year-old. But I mean, it is really cool too. She came and rode her 2 months ago, and, you know, she hasn't really been riding a lot for a couple of years. She has a son and been busy. I mean, it's just cool to see them go around and, you know, do everything, turn, change, run and stop. And I mean, it's in March of their 3-year-old year. Like, I'm excited.
There's so much to be proud of with all of that, though. I mean, it is really, you know, you don't get to meet many people who have been able to ride the mother and the, you know, the sire and the dam, and, you know, then get to work with all these babies. And it's that I would be a very proud parent too if I get to have that opportunity. So
I've been very lucky, and I've been very lucky with the people I've met along the way that kind of have, you know, trusted me and, you know, had really good work and relationships with, to be able to build something like this, you know, because that doesn't always happen. The Kevin Rosenbaum owns the ranch we're at. It's the same thing. He does a lot of breeding too. And it's great to be able to work with people and have a common plan, but dream, you know. It's just, there's so much in your dream, and be able to like actually see it through. I mean, it's a really great thing.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've taken up an hour and some of your time, and I know that you're probably itching to get back to work because it sounds like you are very, very busy with all the horses that you have in your barn. But thank you so much for coming on here and talking with us and letting our listeners get to know you a little more. I feel like I should probably plug in and say that Kari's going to be joining our Horse and Rider On Demand platform. I'm going to go out to Scottsdale this month. Can't believe it's April. And we're going to be doing some filming, and I'm really, really excited to bring you to the platform because I think that you have so much to offer, and I'm really excited.
That'll be great. I'm excited.
Yeah. So before we leave, do you want to plug your website where people can find you on social media and follow along on your journey and like maybe learn a little bit more about Mr. Electric Spark and all these beautiful babies he's producing?
Yeah. I mean, his website is MrElectricSpark.com or Mr. Electric Spark on Facebook. He has Instagram. My website is Kari Klingenberg Performance Sources or same on Facebook. But yeah, I try to keep up with that, and I've got a girl that helps me with doing all the updates on things, but pretty busy. It can be difficult to keep all that stuff.
I could imagine that you're probably not the only horse trainer that's trying to juggle all the things while having.
Sure.
I couldn't imagine after being in the barn all day with, 20, 30, 40 horses and then having to go handle, billing and social media and websites. And yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. It's definitely a different kind of lifestyle, but it's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Like I've mentioned, you're going to see more of Kari in the magazine and online. And thanks again. I'm really excited for what's going to come.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com.
If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.